Vish, who did you have at 2?
Who I had it to me, 2 and 1 was the easiest two things to list on this list. Two is AJ Brown and Julio Jones.
Mm.
And the only reason I would say Julio Jones and AJ Brown aren't one, because in terms of raw talent, I think you can make the argument that
Yeah.
they're one, is just that we haven't seen them do it as a duo yet. But to me, you're talking Julio Jones, top 5 receiver in the NFL. You're talking AJ Brown, top 8, top 7 receiver in the NFL. You're talking two super studs. We've talked a lot about Ryan Tannehill at the top of this show. We both really like Ryan. We both really like Ryan Tannehill. We both think he's a really good quarterback. And then you add in AJ Brown and Julio Jones. They're both complete receivers. They're both great after the catch. They're both great route runners. Julio, in my opinion, a little better than AJ Brown. They're both explosive athletes. They're both really strong. AJ Brown is an amazing player after the catch. I think it's so underrated because, him and Debo came out in the same draft. I think AJ Brown is almost as good as Debo after the catch, honestly. I think he's as
Really
physical. I
good.
think he's as good at breaking tackles. I think he's as strong a runner. He just does it in a different fashion because he's not getting the ball 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He's
In the
getting the
20
ball
yard
20
line.
yards in front of the line of scrimmage. And then how many times have we seen the around the 40-yard line, the Titans take a shot, they go play action. Tannehill rips a 20-yard crosser, and A.J. Brown throws the corner down and just beats the safety's angle for a touchdown. We see that too many times. Julio Jones, I think that people need to stop saying Julio Jones is washed up. I'm so sick
That's
of
wild.
seeing that.
That's
He
wild.
he he was insane last year when he did play. Yes, his lower body, he is managing injuries and all of that, but to me, like Jamal put it perfectly, they're two legitimate receiver ones. AJ Brown was a bona fide top 6, 7 receiver in the NFL last year. He was a baller and he was doing it while injured. Julio Jones, I mean, until last year, like there was probably zero argument for anybody else as the best receiver in the NFL or last 2 years since Tyreek Hill's emergence in my mind. So from that standpoint, like to me, this is a no-brainer. The only reason they're not one is just because we haven't seen it do it together, and there's two super freaks that will be one, in my opinion. But Jesus Christ, like these are two special football players, and yeah, Julio Jones, AJ Brown, they're gonna kill it next season.
Yeah, so this was one I kind of went back and forth on. This was tough for me because I think you mentioned it, right? Like just raw ability and playmaking, you could make the argument Julio and AJ Brown is better because AJ Brown is way more physically dominant than Kelce. But I just think Hill and Kelce are just too good. But I think Hill's probably the best receiver, and I think Kelce's one or two best tight end. So in that case, like, how can I have someone above them? So I had AJ Brown and Julio here. Julio, yeah, top 5, top 6. Somewhere there's like 5 or 6 guys that I think are the tier 1, and he's in there somewhere. Hard to rank him outside of that, but yeah. Julio's route running is still great. Even nursing injuries, he can play. And then AJ Brown, I don't know if he's a top 7 or 8 receiver yet. I don't think he is. He is very physically dominant and all that, but he has only had like combined, he's had 1,000 yards and 1,075 yards. Now I know stats are on everything, but that's what he did his first 2 years. And maybe I think they would be a lot better depending on the offense because they don't throw the ball. They'll run 30 times a game with Derrick Henry. So his stats would be better if he was in an offense that was maybe more pass friendly or pass happy, I guess you could say. Like imagine him on a team like the Texans where they're losing by double digits the whole game and they're just constantly throwing. Yeah,
Right.
they would probably have like 1,500 yards, 1,600 yards. And maybe that's a little bit why, but AJ Brown, I think I'd rather have Kelce than AJ Brown. Like, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say, but you can make an argument that, AJ Brown's ability after the catch is elite. I know you saw the Ravens game where Humphrey, Peters, everyone's trying to tackle him and he's just big bodying everyone. And then down the field, making catches in traffic is nuts. I feel like a lot of his catches, like, on the bombs from Tannehill, there's like a guy that's breathing down his neck and he'll just go up and get it or pull his hands at the last second and snag it. So he's just incredible. And then, yeah, Julio, you don't really need to say much more than he's a top 5 to 6 receiver. The whole wash thing is, Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know. I don't know about all that. I get the injuries. I understand the injury. I think it's an issue because if you remember, I feel like Julio Jones is on the injury report every week and he's questionable, but he'll just play because it's Julio Jones. And he needs to be out there. And then one more thing I wanted to say, but I don't know if I've even talked to you about this, Vish. Did you know about the AJ Brown like knee surgery thing that came out right after the season?
Yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
wanted to say.
we didn't
Surgery on
even
both
mention that.
knees, right?
But so after week 2, he underwent surgery on both of his knees, and he could have realistically been ruled out for the season. He was playing on knees that most people wouldn't have even played on. They would have just sat out and not played. And he didn't even want this information to go public. He was off of meds after the surgery, and I think started going on social media accidentally because he was he just had surgery, so he was under pain meds, and he didn't mean to do that. But I don't know if this was true or not. But he was like he would go around in a wheelchair at times because he just like couldn't walk, which I mean that's unbelievable. Putting up you wouldn't even know that he was that injured considering how he played. So I
Yeah.
think that's just a further testament to how good he is.
Yeah. So a couple things I wanted to touch on before we wanted to move to one. I think you had your reasons why these two guys aren't one, and I talked about it a little briefly just in terms of how good the other two are. But I do want to touch on a couple of things too just before we move on. One, I think you're right about AJ Brown. I think I was a little over emphatic when I said top 7 to 8 receiver. If you really hash it out to me, he's maybe between
He's
like
somewhere in
9
like
and 12, 9 and 12,
somewhere up
somewhere
there,
there. So
yeah.
still like and receiver one, an elite player. Just there's so many names out there. There's like Devonte Adams and Keenan Allen, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of guys.
how
Stephon
do you
Diggs,
even how do you like
right?
Keenan Allen's a name, like how do you rank this guy compared to AJ? They're just so different. They're good at different
Right.
stuff, but they're both incredible.
Stephon Diggs. And here's my other thing with AJ Brown. And this is something that two things I think bear this out with AJ Brown. One, there's this thing called reception perception. I sent you the link. My man Jason Aponte plugged me with this. And there's something I noticed with AJ Brown in his first 2 seasons in the NFL, and reception perception does a really good job of charting this. So AJ Brown is really, really good at running crossers. He's really, really good at running digs. He's really good at running posts. Any sort of in-breaking route, AJ Brown is a lead out. He's not that great at running out-breaking routes as much. And the reception perception bears that out. Is AJ Brown's Matt Harmon, I think he's the one who charted it. AJ Brown's statistical production when it comes to outbreaking routes in 2020 or just out routes was not as good as in routes. So, for example, on a dig, AJ Brown had success 78.1% of the time. That is above league average.
3 out of
On an
4
out
times.
route, AJ Brown was successful 69.2% of the time. Now, you might think 69.2% of the time, only 9% less than uh, less than the dig, but this was way less than league average. So when you look at all of those things, and that to me, there are some things with AJ Brown that isn't as complete as the two guys in front in Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. We know that Julio Jones is as complete a football player as we've seen. To me, he's a future first ballot Hall of Fame receiver. There shouldn't be questions about that. And AJ Brown to me is right there as the top 10 receivers in the NFL, and he's really, really good. I don't want that to be lost here. I'm a big AJ Brown fan.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're parsing and you're asking the question, are these two guys better than Tyreek Hill, who I think is the best wide receiver in the NFL, and then, like you said, Travis Kelce is a top 1 or 2 tight end? There's a couple of things there as to why I would say no.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you had the Chiefs number 1, Hill and Kelce. Why'd you have them there? I mean, we both had them there. So, but you can go first.
Yeah, so I think we both kind of touched on it while trying to argue for why Brown and Julio are 2, but it's pretty simple. It's the best receiver in the NFL. It's the best receiving tight end in the NFL. Tyreek Hill, to me, is the best offensive weapon in the NFL. He is incredible on jet sweeps. He scares teams when he goes in motion. He's a very underratedly good route runner. He's a very
Mhm.
underrated contested catch receiver
Yeah,
because his hops make him have a much bigger catch radius than his actual size makes you think that he has. So the perception is that he's this down the field threat, but he's a little Antonio Brownish where he can really make a lot of catches in tight spaces and stuff. We know about his game breaking speed. He's very fast. But I think what makes Tyreek Hill more special than other fast guys in NFL history is that he's maintains his speed while being very agile and explosive and really strong in terms of his legs. If you look at Tyreek Hill's legs, they are big
they're
for a guy
huge.
that fast compared to like Deshaun Jackson. He's got thick legs and that helps him because he's a really, really explosive after the catch guy. Like Tyreek Hill can not only beat you on an 80-yard touchdown where Mahomes throws it up, he can also do the thing where, you know, that little push pass that Chip Kelly brought into play in the NFL where it's the ultimate stat pad for quarterbacks because it's a very
Yeah.
easy high percentage completion. But it's basically turning the jet sweep into a low risk play because you can't fumble. Because if you fumble, it's an incomplete pass. So he can take that 80 yards for a touchdown. There's not that many receivers that can do that. To me, he threatens defenses more than any other receiver in the NFL. That's why I think he's the best receiver. And then Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is just one of the most versatile offensive weapons in the NFL. He's unbelievable in the red zone. He's unbelievable at finding space versus zone coverage. He's unbelievable versus man coverage. He's great after the catch. He can line up as inline as your tight end. He can line up as your X receiver. He can line up as your Z receiver. He can line up as your slot receiver. You can do anything with him, and the guy just finds ways to get open. One of the Chiefs' best formations is a 3-by-1 with Travis Kelce as the single receiver on the lone side, and they just isolate him and allow him to get open, and he wins one-on-one against elite corners and stuff. They're both unbelievable. To me, when you add in Patrick Mahomes, which is obviously a huge thing because it's the best quarterback in the NFL, but when you look at the fact that they have the best receiving duo in the NFL, like two guys that are just elite by themselves, and you add them together, it's to me just unbelievable. I think that I would like to say that I thought about this harder and, you know, people made this a conversation, but at the end of the day, to me, it really wasn't that close. These two guys are by far the best receiving duo.
Interesting. Yeah, so I had them there too. I think with Tyreek Hill, you mentioned the route running. He wasn't that great of a route runner his first year. He was more of just, get this dude in open space and he's going to kill teams because he's that fast. But now he's one of the best route runners, but I just don't feel that really gets talked about enough. Because you need more than just speed. Now speed helps. Like a guy like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's not a good route runner, he's really fast and in a straight line. Yeah, he'll beat you from time to time, but Tyreek Hill can beat you on pretty much any route, it seems. And that's why I also agree with you. I think he's the best receiver in the league with just, I don't know if it's like, there's no stat on it, obviously, but just like the fear factor that Tyreek Hill can go yard any single play, and he doesn't need much help from anyone else besides a decently accurate pass is just kind of a scary thought. If you remember Mahomes' not first playoff game, but the AFC Championship game against the Patriots, and the Chiefs struggled in the first half, and in the second half, Tyreek Hill just started going nuclear because they were doing everything. They were doubling him frequently and putting Gilmore on him and all that, but just didn't matter because he was so fast and he would just get over the top and score. So yeah, I think Tyreek Hill is also the best receiver. And then Kelce, for me, he was hard to grade, right? Because I feel like he is the best or second best tight end. I don't know how good he is after the catch. That's where I would dock him a little bit. Now, he's not like Jimmy Graham where, he's getting tackled on the first touch, but he can break tackles and stuff, but he's not obviously the fastest. He is more of like the prototypical tight end. That's where I had trouble comparing him with someone like AJ Brown because let's face it, Kelce has benefited a lot from being with Mahomes, and Mahomes benefits a lot from being with Kelce. But if you had AJ Brown in an offense with Mahomes and he was finding holes similar to Kelce does, like imagine how dominant that would be after the catch. I think that would be extraordinarily better, and it's hard to grade because you don't see AJ Brown in that offense. But yeah, I'm with you with Kelce and Hill at one. I think I was pretty close having the Titans there, just because comparing Kelce and AJ Brown, very different types of pass catchers. But yeah, Kelce is about as dominant as you get for a tight end. And if you need any further proof, just watch what he did to the Texan safeties in the divisional round of 2019, I want to say. I think he had like 150 yards, and they were doubling him, and he was still getting wide open quite frequently. So he's awesome. And yeah, this offense, the Chiefs offense, Mahomes, and then debatably the best receiver duo, and then Andy Reid on top of it. It's not a surprise they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's formidable. I think the crazy thing is that I think the guys around these guys actually get overrated a ton. Like Sammy Watkins was basically MIA the last 2 years. Byron Pringle, I don't think he's very good. McCole Hardman, to me, is not as good as what people expected when they drafted him. He's a good kick returner. He's a good punt returner. He is not a great receiver. But because they have these two guys in Mahomes, they really make it happen. I think just because they have Mahomes, you shouldn't understate how special both of these guys are. Like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce both had really, really good seasons with Alex Smith at quarterback in 2017. Mm-hmm. Travis Kelce had multiple good seasons with Alex Smith. Tyreek Hill, you mentioned, wasn't the greatest route runner as a rookie, improved a lot in his second year, that first year with Alex Smith. And he's just gotten better exponentially to the point where I think you and I agree he's the best receiver in the NFL because he is an underrated route runner, but he's a really good one. His contested catches, I catch in traffic. I think both of those things are very underrated and very under talked about. His ability to go up and get the ball. I mean, week 1 versus the Jaguars 2 years ago, this was when the Jaguars got Nick Foles. And if you remember, people thought the Jaguars defense was going to be back to the 2017 Jaguars defense. And Jalen Ramsey played Tyreek Hill pretty well in that game. But I think their first touchdown, Mahomes threw a bomb, and Tyreek Hill outjumped 2 people and caught it in the end zone. It might not have been the Jaguars game; it might have been a different game. But he jumps 40 inches. He's incredible. So yeah, for all those reasons, to me, yeah, this is the best receiving duo in the NFL.